tonight, facing a summer of discontent. Council workers are to be balloted on strike action over pay. Thousands of cleansing and school support staff are the latest involved in public sector pay disputes.
Bills going through the roof, everyone can feel that at the moment, so they just need a serious and credible offer from COSLA.
Also making the headlines, the grass isn't greener. An environmental warning, how installing a plastic lawn might be low maintenance but could cost the earth.
The pride of the Clyde, the plan to bring ships and jobs back to Govan's dry docks.
And in sport, let's create history. The Scotland coaching team call on the players to qualify for the World Cup for the first time in 24 years. I'm Kellyanne Woodland in Edinburgh.
And I'm John Mackay in Glasgow. This is the STV News at 6. Good evening. As ScotRail drivers consider their latest pay offer tonight, we're facing the prospect of more industrial action, this time from thousands of council workers. Two of the biggest unions, GMB and Unite, say they're to ballot members working in local authorities over possible strikes.
They've described a proposed 2% salary increase as paltry and pathetic. It comes alongside more public sector pay disputes, including college lecturers and the police. Well, our senior reporter Gordon Cree has been following developments. Gordon.
Yeah, the public sector is a huge employer, and those workers deliver a wide range of vital frontline services, and that gives the unions a lot of power because of the disruption that any impact on those services can have. We've seen that with ScotRail, where the pay offer that was originally on the table was almost doubled because of the threat of action. The other unions, of course, now see that, and they feel that their members shouldn't be losing out in comparison. For weeks now, tensions between ScotRail and its drivers have seen services disrupted. As an improved offer of 4.2% is weighed up, there is some hope of getting things back on track. But the summer could see services from the likes of LNER left at a standstill, with RMT union members in 13 train operators and at Network Rail voting for strikes. At the heart of it, a desire for workers not to be left poorer by soaring inflation.
Bearing in mind that rail workers went above and beyond the call of duty during the height of the pandemic, taking the risk every day, turning up to work and taking the risk back to their families every day, not like the bosses sitting in the house.
They could be joined by thousands of council cleansing workers and school support staff. Their unions say many are on less than $25,000 a year, and that means the pay deal on offer to them works out at less than £10 a week.
Facing into the biggest cost of living crisis in 40 years, with inflation in double digits, £10 a week will not cover their expenses that they're going through at the moment. With bills going through the roof, everyone can feel that at the moment. So they just need a serious and credible offer from COSLA.
COSLA says it remains in discussions with the unions. Outside Edinburgh Council, this statue is called Everyman. The sculptor says it's a symbol of Joe Public. And from people in the city centre today, a consensus that times are tough.
Obviously, we have a highest inflation for the past 30 years, if I'm right. So obviously, the inflation have to go in pay rise.
I don't think we should be fueling inflation with pay increases.
I think the cost of living has gone up, and I think that everybody needs to be paid enough to live on.
There's unhappiness too from the country's police officers. Their union, the Scottish Police Federation, says a pay offer made to them is unfair. And while they're not allowed to strike, the practice of often working beyond their contracted hours is likely to stop.
That loss of discretionary contribution from police officers for the police service will have an impact. And only when the public realise that policing is often delivered on goodwill and politicians see the pain of the removal of that goodwill, will I suspect we will see politicians respond accordingly.
With a summer of industrial strife on the cards, one glimmer of a deal, I understand talks between college lecturers and their employers may be close to a resolution.
And Gordon, still huge problems with the ScotRail timetable this week.
Yeah, absolutely. That temporary timetable remains in force, meaning 700 fewer services a day than normal. But in the last few minutes, ScotRail has announced some extra services for Wednesday night, when, of course, Scotland play Ukraine at Hampden. They say there will now be extra trains going out of Glasgow Queen Street to Edinburgh at 11:15 and 11:45 midnight, and extra late-night services to the likes of Ayr, Gourock and East Kilbride. Nothing going north of Stirling, though, and given where a lot of Scotland fans will be coming from, that still means thousands of people facing a big headache around that game.
All right, Gordon, the very latest there. Thank you. OK, well, let's cross to our political editor, Colin Mackay now. And Colin, what chance do workers have of getting these pay rises?
Well, the Scottish Government mostly has a fixed budget from the Treasury, so any increase in public sector pay could mean cuts elsewhere. Now, to put that in some kind of perspective, a 1% pay rise across the NHS in Scotland would cost £120 million. Across the entire public sector, you're looking at £300 to £400 million, and that's just for 1%. The nursing union, the RCN, have gone into the negotiations starting off calling for inflation plus 5%. So what I'd expect from the Finance Secretary, Kate Forbes, in her statement to Parliament tomorrow is probably pointing out that the Scottish Government's budget hasn't gone up by inflation and urging the unions to try and caulk Annie on their pay claims. But it's up to the unions to get the best deal they can for their members.
OK, Colin, so tell us a bit more about what we can expect tomorrow then.
Well, I suppose if you're starting, if you're having a 4-year spending review, you probably ideally wouldn't start from here in the midst of a cost of living crisis, facing inflation going up to potentially 10% this year. So Kate Forbes admits that she's facing some difficult decisions to support households and services across Scotland. The Institute for Fiscal Studies said Scotland could be facing a £3.5 billion black hole in 4-year times because of big spending commitments here, and also because the tax income isn't quite so high. So I think what you'll get tomorrow, though, is probably more of a holding statement from Kate Forbes. Some would say it's more like a hoping statement, hoping that things get better soon.
All right, Colin, well, we'll hear more from you tomorrow. Thanks very much for that.
The cost of living crisis is forcing some of Scotland's most vulnerable to choose between heating their homes or having a hot meal. The charity Age Scotland says pensioners are being disproportionately affected by rising prices.
However, there's concern many are not accessing available healthcare services and could face illness and malnutrition next winter, as Caroline Lewis reports.
This centre in Glasgow's Castlemilk offers older people the chance of a good meal and a get-together. But back home, many are finding it more and more difficult to make ends meet.
I hope I don't have to make the decision between eating and heating, because nobody should have to make that decision. This is a cold country. We need the heat in the winter.
I mean, I worked like 3 jobs to be able to afford my mortgage. Now I feel I'm being punished because I worked so hard and earned my money to earn a pension.
I don't put lamps on, I put the television on, I lie down and put it all off at the main at night before I go to bed to try and slow it down a wee bit. It's making me really ill. I've lost a lot of weight, just through worrying about when is it going to stop.
It's estimated 150,000 older people in Scotland are currently living in poverty. And charities say pensioners are among those hit hardest by rising costs, forcing many to make difficult decisions.
And we've already anecdotally heard people are making decisions between heating and eating. They're choosing to have smaller portion sizes. They're choosing to not heat their meals and eat cold food, which is just wholly unacceptable. We already know that 1 in 10 older adults in Scotland are malnourished, and actually our data suggests that could be higher at nearly 30%.
Last week, the Chancellor announced pensioners would be handed a one-off grant for winter fuel. But charity Age Scotland say many older people are missing out on help already available to them.
Nationally, we have this big stigma about benefits, but it's something that folks have earned, something that people are entitled to. And that's the whole point of it being there. So people making sure that they get it, and there is no shame in this. If anything, it's making sure you're claiming you're getting what your rights are. And I think too many people go without their rights for far too long, to a massive detriment to their well-being.
But as the cost of living crisis rumbles on and more older people find themselves stretched, for some, centres like this will inevitably be a vital lifeline. Caroline Lewis, STV News.
Rangers say their fans were not treated with dignity during the Europa League final in Seville. The Ibrox side say they had major concerns over a number of incidents both inside the stadium and out. And the club has joined with Eintracht Frankfurt in condemning UEFA. Well, our reporter Ronnie Charters was inside the Raman Sajwes Pithwan Stadium the night of the game. What's the latest in this story, Ronnie?
Well, Rangers have today issued a joint statement with opponents Eintracht Frankfurt and the group Football Supporters Europe. That's after they heard complaints from their fans about the inadequate facilities within the stadium and, of course, the shortage of water. Now, Rangers also quite rightly praised the behaviour of their supporters, over 100,000 fans in Seville, not one arrest, and also praised how they handled the appalling circumstances they found themselves in. John, we were inside the ground for STV quite early on. You could tell something wasn't quite right. In the second half, our team ended up having to pass bottles of water back to fans because they were simply dehydrated. The press had them, but for some reason supporters couldn't. UEFA have since apologised for this, saying they couldn't meet the extraordinary demands put on their resources. Recommendations will now be sent to the governing body by Rangers and Frankfurt. They will also be sent, though, to the authorities in Seville.
And of course, Ronnie, we saw at the weekend more distressing scenes in a European final, this time the Champions League final.
Yeah, UEFA really do have questions to answer about how they host European finals, especially this year. Saturday we saw Liverpool fans subjected to tear gas and pepper spray. Claims of ticket frauds, claims we may add, were disputed and still are disputed by Liverpool Football Club. Those scenes are being investigated by UEFA, but certainly, John, in terms of the Champions League final, the Europa League final, big showpiece events for UEFA, and they haven't handled them well at all in terms of accommodating supporters.
Ronnie, thank you for that.
Now, with many of us having spent a lot more time outdoors due to the pandemic, a growing number of people are turning their attention to their gardens and installing artificial lawns. It's a low-maintenance option with no need to spend your weekends getting the lawnmower out. But at what cost?
Well, environmentalists say it's not an eco-friendly option and it could be affecting wildlife. They're so concerned about the rise in the number of artificial lawns, they're reminding homeowners that by laying artificial lawns, they risk flooding and, the bigger scale, leaving a larger carbon trail due to the plastic. Laura Piper explains.
When lockdown hit, people turned to improving their gardens and, according to Google, to artificial grass. There was a staggering 185% jump in online searches for it, and sales boomed.
This one is like really nice. It's just as soon as there is a little bit of sun, it's completely dry and they can be out much more than as compared to the normal grass.
My husband not really like cut the grass, and it's only also really easy to vacuum cleaner.
It's easier for the kids and it's easier in that you don't have to cut it, so we don't need to store a lawnmower. But environmentally, I would be more keen, if the circumstances were different, to have real grass.
This company in West Lothian roll out 500 artificial lawns a year.
I'd say the industry has as much as exploded really in the last maybe 10 years. It can be recycled. The problem is it's very expensive. We see fly tipping going on. It's very difficult to find someone to take large quantities of it. We also donate quite a bit to schools, nurseries, care homes. We try to do what we can, but there's definitely an issue with recycling it.
Plastic grass is a £2 billion global market, expected to nearly double by next year. But as it takes over urban areas, some warn that it's green only in colour.
They're sitting there being green, but not doing what grass that I'm standing on does. They're not doing the environmental things of helping to clean the air, absorbing water, slowing the flow of rainfall when we get heavy rainfall events, providing a wildlife habitat.
The Royal Horticultural Society has announced a ban on artificial grass from its world-famous flower shows, and Dobby's Garden Centre said they are phasing it out of their stores. The focus instead on bringing wildlife back to gardens. So is it time to turf out artificial grass?
I think it's always worth having something growing in your garden if you can.
Laura Piper, STV News.
On to other stories now, and people are being urged to fill in the census form before tomorrow's deadline. 1 in 10 households has still yet to do so. The original deadline for completion was extended by a month due to a poor completion rate.
The former Rangers goalkeeper Andy Gorham says doctors have told him he has 6 months to live after being diagnosed with terminal cancer. The 58-year-old told the Daily Record newspaper he will fight like he has never fought before against the illness.
A man has been arrested after being caught driving at nearly 150 miles per hour between Glasgow and Stirling. The 31-year-old was also charged with drug driving after being clocked at more than twice the speed limits on the M80 on Saturday night.
The Scottish Conservative leader Douglas Ross says he needs all parties to come together to support his right to recovery bill that would make it a legal right for anyone addicted to drugs or alcohol to get access to necessary treatment. Scotland's drug death rate is the highest in Europe.
For too long, drug deaths in Scotland have been our national shame, and the figures go up year after year after year. That's more people unnecessarily losing their lives and families distraught as a result. So I'm not saying this is the silver bullet. I'm not saying this will solve all of the problems, but I think it would be a massive step forward. And that's why I hope, now that we've got so much support in the community and across Scotland, that we get the political support as well.
2 talented young women from Ukraine who fled the war and are now living in Scotland are about to start studying here. Both have secured places at what's one of the world's leading music schools, the Royal Conservatoire in Glasgow.
Sophia and Jing say their love of music helps them deal with the pain of having to leave their home behind. A concert is now being planned to raise money for their studies, as Louise Hosey reports.
Getting some practice in. The war in Ukraine meant classical pianists Sophia and Jing had to leave their country and their music courses at Lviv University. Now living in Ellon with a host family, they're able to rehearse here at nearby Haddo House.
After leaving Ukraine, Sophia and Jing were both determined to continue studying music. They've now each been granted a place at the prestigious Royal Conservatoire in Glasgow.
When you play music, you don't think about about political things or something. Just like go to another world and you just think about music, about beautiful something. It's another. I had an opportunity that I can study here, and I think I need to catch it.
I'm very grateful to the people of Scotland for everything they've done for us. They are so kind. Without them, we wouldn't have been able to do this. In the future, I'd like to be like the people I've met here.
The Steinway piano Sophia and Jing are practising on belongs to the Haddo House Operatic Society. It's planning a concert to help support the young women with their future studies.
I wondered whether we could do something to help them, because they have no funds at the moment to pay for accommodation, just for all their studies. Music it's international. It doesn't matter what language you actually speak.
So immediately I thought, here they are, they're near Haddo. They must come and see Haddo and play, and what can we do for them here? Meeting the girls today and hearing them play, it's just absolutely incredible. The feeling of hope and for better days ahead for them.
Sophia and Jing will move to Glasgow after the summer. They say they're extremely grateful to the people of Scotland and the affinity they've found with them through the power of music. Louise Hosey, STV News.
Historic docks on the River Clyde are to reopen after more than 3 decades. £500,000 of investment in dry dock number 1 could see ships return to the site by December. Ollie Dickinson has more.
For 35 years, the Govan graving docks have lay dormant. The site once served hundreds of ships, but most recently was part of the set for a Hollywood movie. But now, dock number 1 is preparing for a blockbuster comeback of its own.
Following the successful feasibility study we done in 2020, we're very confident that the funding is in place and we will have an operational dry dock by the end of this year. My career started in Govan Shipbuilders in way back in the early 80s. So this place means a lot to me. I was in Govan working when this place was still operational, so I really want to see it back in the map again.
It's not the first attempt to breathe new life into the dock. 4 years ago, an application for around 700 flats and leisure facilities at the site was dismissed, with concerns it didn't celebrate the area's history. But the new plans want to put history front and centre.
The dry dock will look like it looked back in its heyday, employing a lot of people. It's a historic dry dock and will retain its existing features. We need to preserve the shipbuilding skills and the ship repairing skills that we have in Scotland, and there's been a decline in the training, the investment, and we're going to bring that back. We're going to train and we're going to invest in people in the local area and wider Scotland.
Liz Gardner is an expert on Glasgow's maritime history. She believes the return of ships and also jobs to the dry docks is a victory for Govan and the Clyde.
People want the heritage celebrated, they want that respected and sensitively developed, but more importantly they want jobs. We believe it's in our DNA, it's sort of hardwired, that whole business of ships, shipbuilding, ship repair. We can smell it, we can feel it. That's who we want to be.
The aim is to have the dock back up and running by December, bringing an historic industry back to prime position on the River Clyde. Ollie Dickinson, STV News, Glasgow.
Now, Rahman is here with the sport.
Get your fill of the action. STV Sport, sponsored by Papa John's Pizza.
Good evening. Stephen Naismith has urged the Scotland players to create history and qualify for the World Cup for the first time in almost a quarter of a century. The Scots face Ukraine in their semi-final playoff on Wednesday night. If they win this, they'll face Wales in the final on Sunday. And Scotland coach Naismith says the squad is in a good place. In just over 48 hours' time, these players have the chance to put themselves one game away from the World Cup. Steve Clarke's men face Ukraine at Hampden in the playoff semi-final against the backdrop of their country being invaded by Russia. The Scots are on a run of 8 games unbeaten as they target a spot in Qatar.
Scotland go in confident, and like I said before, you're so close to making more history that over the last 2 years we've been fortunate with a great team. That great team's 2 years more experience, 2 years the players have progressed in their club level, and hopefully we can take the first steps of getting to World Cup.
After Liverpool's end-of-season celebrations, Andy Robertson joined up with his teammates. Despite his side losing the Champions League final at the weekend, the coaching staff expect their skipper to be over the disappointment come Wednesday night.
His experience now of these occasions is far greater than anybody else in the squad. The rewards of this game are just as big, that he could be leading his country to a World Cup in 1 game's time if he can get the win. So Robbo's a class act, he's a leader, he'll understand what's at stake.
Now, after the Celtic women's team won the Scottish Cup final to add to their League Cup success earlier in the season, Kelly Clarke is confident they can win the league next season.
We've got a really, really good core of girls. It's been an absolute pleasure working with them this year. It's definitely up there with the best, if not the best group of girls that I've worked with, and we've got a core that we can go and build on, get better and better and better. We already understand the way that each other play, and I think you can see that on the pitch. But yeah, we will definitely look to improve next year, especially in the league, and I'm sure we can do that with this group of players.
Rugby, and John Barclay believes Glasgow Warriors will need to be better than they have been for weeks if they have to have chance against Leinster on Saturday. The Warriors travel to Ireland having lost their last 3 games to face the beaten European Cup finalists, and Barclay admits his former side will be facing a big challenge.
The challenge for Glasgow is massive. To go to the RDS and to win in a knockout stage of the league is a big challenge, in particular now that Leinster are able to focus all their energy onto that game. So yeah, it'll be a really, really tough fixture for them, but they'll be primed. They won't be overawed by it. But they have to play better than they have done for the last couple of weeks anyway. And certainly against Edinburgh, I thought they were very poor.
And finally, after being crowned the world's strongest man for the 2nd year in a row, Tom Stokeman says it was even more special this time around. The 28-year-old Scot defeated Alexei Novikov in the final 2 events in Sacramento, California to claim the title.
I feel very, very good. Obviously doing it last year was special, but doing it this year is even more special because one, it's back to back, and two, I had my wife there with me as well. The COVID's kind of clearing up now, and to have people there that I love and who love me is good to share the moment with,
Well done to him. That is all the sport for me tonight, folks.
Get your fill of the action. STV Sport, sponsored by Papa John's Pizza.
Now, Philip has the weather forecast.
A light drizzle is coming in from the west. TUI Blue Hotels sponsor STV Weather.
Well, to start the week, we've got this large area of low pressure across the country dominating our weather, keeping things unsettled and showery. There's very little isobars around, so that means very little wind. So if you do catch a shower, it will be with you for quite some time. By the middle of the week, we start to see high pressure building in from the west, and that does look set to give us a calmer, more settled weekend to look forward to. Back to just now, and as we head through this evening, there's still some showers around like we've seen through the course of the day. Some of those banding together to create longer spells of rain. Through the early hours of tomorrow morning, though, we do start to see things turning drier and clearer. So where we've got the clear skies, we'll see temperatures dropping to lows of around 3 or 4 degrees Celsius, and that is cold enough to see a touch of grass frost. Now, looking ahead to tomorrow, there'll be showers from the get-go across western areas. Central, southern and eastern parts, a drier start with some sunshine, but through the morning that sunshine could spark off some further showers and more spread in from the North Sea. So through the afternoon we'll see a mixture of sunny spells and scattered locally heavy showers. Could hear the odd rumble of thunder, and like I said, there is very little wind, so if you do have a shower it could be with you for quite some time. Temperature wise, reaching highs of 14 degrees in the best of the brightness. Then looking ahead to Wednesday, it is an improving picture, more in the way of sunshine across western areas from Arran up to Stornoway, and temperatures recovering, highs of 16 degrees. Bye bye.
TUI Blue Hotels sponsor STV Weather.
Well, that's all from us tonight. I'll be back with Scotland tonight at 10:45. We'll have our usual panel and also be looking at the census returns, which haven't been impressive so far.
And we're back again tomorrow at 6. Join us then. See you later.
Good night.